Assalamu alaikum and good evening to everyone who's joined this session, which is on nutrition and lifestyle. My name is Zaida. I'm one of the trustees with Safina Muslim Cancer Support Network. For those of the participants that have joined today that don't know about Safina, we launched just over a year ago. And the reason why we were set up is because we wanted to provide services specifically for Muslims who are affected by cancer and to provide them that practical support in the form of befriending support services. And we've recently extended our services to provide bereavement support services as well. Although our services are targeted for Muslims because we found that there was a gap in terms of the support that they receive, our services are in fact open to everyone, faith or no faith. We welcome everyone. As part of our remit, we also do what we can to raise the awareness of cancer within the Muslim community so that we can normalise conversations of cancer and destroy or remove that taboo of cancer that currently exists within our communities, but at the same time educating the Muslim communities about cancer, but also like things like nutrition and lifestyle, which is a session we have today. That's all I'm going to say about Safina. Nadia will leave the contact details for our charity in the chat function. If anybody wants further information or support, then please do get in touch with us. Just a few housekeeping before we start. If you could switch on your cameras, it would be really lovely for us to see you. But if you're not able to, that's absolutely fine. There will be an opportunity at the end to ask any questions. Feel free to come online or post any questions on the chat box. We will be monitoring it. Please also be mindful that this is an area which has so many different opinions and schools of thought. So just be respectful of people's backgrounds and opinions. Also, please be mindful, and I'm sure you will be, to be inclusive. If you do use any terminology which is not in English, please do explain what that means as well. This session, when we planned it, it was going to be hosted by a sister called Nilofer. But unfortunately, she's not been able to do this due to circumstances outside of her control. So there's aspects of this session that we had designed, for example, the Sunnah foods, which we won't be able to cover today, but inshallah we'll probably be able to do another session which will follow on from this one. Before I introduce Chrissy, I just wanted to say that 12 years ago, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I made a conscious decision that whilst I was going through my active treatment, I wasn't going to do anything to change my diet or lifestyle. But come the end of the treatment, I was going to make lots of changes and improve my diet and also my lifestyle. And as for somebody who can pick up a book or pick up information and able to absorb that and make sense of it, I thought it's not going to be an issue. I'll come to the end of my treatment, I'll go onto Google or I'll pick up a textbook on diet and lifestyle and I will know what to do. Boy, was I wrong. It was actually an absolute minefield. There was so much information out there, and for each study that said a particular thing, there was another study that counteracted it. And I got very, very confused. And it just so happened that I went to a session like this, and I really benefited from it. And without putting too much pressure on Chrissy, hopefully this is what you'll get out from this session today. I'm really mindful, and I'm really also very, very grateful to Chrissy, who I would say that she joined us at the 11th hour, because that's literally what happened. We only spoke on Thursday and she agreed to come on board at such short notice. I'm extremely, extremely grateful. She will be here to take any questions at the end, but if there's any questions that she needs to look into, she will be more than happy to look into those, and I can come back to you on those. So just a little bit about Chrissy. Chrissy was diagnosed with anal carcinoma in 2011. and was given an emergency colostomy prior to her treatment, and she's had to go through various further surgery, including a permanent stoma. She now plays an active part in helping people during their cancer journey and beyond, looking at nutrition and lifestyle. On that note, I'm going to pass you over to Chrissy. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Zahida and I both share our cancer date, the same year, 2011, and I had a very similar story, that I tried to read everything thinking that I would be able to work it out, and I became more and more confused, which was the reason that I became a nutritional therapist. I couldn't work.
So can you just come here? Look.
Oh,
sorry, can you please go on mute?
Sarah, you just come here.
So where was I? Oh, I couldn't be a gardener anymore.
So just, I don't know what this is all showing now. The chat, I didn't want to talk.
Sorry, Nadia, can you put everybody on mute apart from Chrissy?
Have you seen this before?
No. What is this?
I don't know what this is.
Exit it.
But I just wanted to
just close the whole thing and go back to the link.
There's the link. Look.
Click on it. Continue.
Sorry about that, Chrissy. If you go ahead.
It's all right. There's always confusing problems.
Okay, I think that's sorted now.
Yeah, I think. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. So anyway, this is me, Chrissy Vanier Nutrition. So if we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So nutritional therapy is supportive for people during their treatment and also afterwards to restore you to the best possible health. And that health and your abilities may be different than before the cancer, but in most cases, people do come back and say, actually, I feel healthier than I did before I was ill. So because we're human, we don't really change our ways until we have to. So nutritional therapy is designed to be integrative with your cancer treatment. It's not an alternative. If you have very serious illness, I completely agree that you should go and get your chemo and your radiotherapy and your emergency medicine. And I firmly believe that by changing your diet and lifestyle afterwards and holding on to the belief that things will get better, that things do get better. Can we have the next slide, please? So this is my education. I won't bore you with all of it, but the main bit, I guess, is that I spent 3 years studying at the College of Naturopathic Medicine and did anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, as well as nutrition, just so that I could put that into context. And then I've done further training in gastrointestinal illnesses, one of my passions, and also cancer training, use of mushrooms as therapeutic supplements in cancer, and also genetic training, which can be useful, genetic testing that can be useful. What did I say about that? I do work with people outside of cancer as well, but mostly people with serious illness or recovering from serious illness. So could we have the next slide, please? So nutritional therapy is about zooming out and looking at the whole person. It's not just focusing on the cancer or the disease. You are an individual, not your diagnosis. And I think that's really, really important when you go into a hospital setting. For many of us, it's not a place we've ever been to before or ever wanted to go to. And you can feel that you lose your identity at a time when you're feeling really, really vulnerable as well. So I think it's a difficult time. Moving on to the next slide. So during treatment, actually I've jumped ahead of myself there. In an ideal world, you would have people doing what we call prehabilitation, which is preparing your body and your mind to engage in your cancer treatment. So in an ideal world, I love it if I can see people at their first sign of diagnosis, and really just to help them through that, but also put some things in place so that you are going into your treatment as healthily as possible. Onto the next slide. Thank you. So during treatment, I think, like Zahida said, for many people, it's really not possible to do a great deal during the treatment. And quite often people just feel very ill. Some people manage to do a lot, some people do a little. So anti-inflammatory foods, really, really important if you can eat. So eating real foods and eating foods appropriate to your diagnosis. So if you have a hormone-driven breast cancer, you really don't want to be eating dairy products, because naturally, even if they're organic, they are hormonal. They're full of cow hormones. And protein is hugely important. Many people come to me and say, "Oh, I've gone vegan," and at that point I normally say, "Please stop doing that," because animal proteins are actually easier for the body to digest, and particularly if you've got colorectal cancer where your intestinal system is compromised, or really any cancer where you're going through chemotherapy and radiotherapy, you know that your guts are very much affected, and your appetite, your ability to digest food is very much reduced. So protein is from the Greek protos, which actually means essential, but of prime importance. It's essential for life. So if you can't eat anything else, eat your protein first. And really, for people going through cancer and in recovery after cancer, providing their kidney function is okay, you want to be looking at around 1.3 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day, which for many people is really, really hard to achieve, especially if you have no appetite. So you can, I think lots of people have had to drink the Ensure drinks that the hospital gives out, which are really quite difficult to drink after a while and are very sugary, but there are better quality protein powders on the market, and I tend to try to give people a protein drink that is actually edible, because if you've got very little appetite and you're being given something that tastes very synthetic, it's really not good. So I tend to say get a good protein powder. I like to use the organic protein company whey protein where possible, and add half a frozen banana, and if you can, some vinegar washed spinach, and some, I like to say, a good glug of olive oil, because the olive oil has got the healthy fats, but it's full of polyphenols, and I think it makes the drink taste it tastes more silky, and it's much nicer to drink, and it's giving you a lot of different types of energy. So when you've lost your appetite, it's really important to eat the nutritionally loaded things first. So eating some vegetables in your first mouthful, and then eating your protein, going back to your carbohydrates and your healthy fats in, and having your carbohydrates in the form of vegetables before you fill up with something like rice, which is, it's not giving you a lot really. So it's good to get your good food in first, and eating appetizing food. So the more colourful our food and the more diverse our food, the more diverse our nutrient intake, and very importantly, the more diverse our microbiome. And the microbiome is housing a large portion of our immune system. So we really want to look after it as well as we can, which obviously it's really difficult during cancer, because you're being given a poison to help you, and you're often being radiated as well, and then having to have intravenous or high dose antibiotics. So it's not about making you feel that you fail if you have to have antibiotics. It's just about trying to add in some nutrition. It's really damage limitation when you're going through the treatment. And anti-nausea products, which I've got another slide on, so I'll come back to that. And regulating your bowel movements as far as you possibly can. It depends on which type of cancer you have and what kind of treatment, how it affects your bowel movements, but often it does. And if you're constipated, you're holding on to toxins, you're very uncomfortable, it affects your mental health, you feel miserable and just generally pretty awful. And of course, if you have diarrhea, you're again very uncomfortable, but you're losing the nutrients that you're eating. So trying to do things to alleviate those symptoms where possible. And in an ideal world, eating in a regulated way, which is generally to eat 3 meals a day, is a good, healthy way of eating for your bowel, because you eat something, you have a little fast in between, you eat again, fast again, and everything works quite nicely. However, if you're losing weight, and particularly the hospital guidance will be often just eat anything at all. And I partially agree with them, but I would say eat any protein at all. because that cancer skinniness, cachexia, is really more about muscle loss than weight loss. And that's why you feel so fatigued and, you know, really losing energy, not really feeling yourself. So protein is essential to maintain your muscle mass. So it's just, you know, if I had a banner for cancer, it would say protein, protein, and more protein. And herbs and spices are wonderful in cancer because they're incredibly nutritious. They have many calmative and therapeutic properties, and you can just add them to your food without having the bulk of, you know, a pile of broccoli is really full of phytonutrients, but you can still, without an appetite, season your meat and your food with herbs and spices, and you're still taking in some really powerful nutrients. And for myself personally, I would say that my health is down to my very nice spice shelf in my kitchen cupboard. And I'm a great believer in spices. In fact, some of the problems with cooking meat occurs where if you burn the meat or cook it at a very high temperature, you can cause advanced glycation end products, or AGEs for short, thank goodness. And actually, by seasoning your meat and marinating your meat, that process is really inhibited. So, and I like it because it's traditional. It goes back many years. And while we look to people like, I've forgotten the Greek guy's name, Hippocrates, who's always seen as the father of medicine, of Western medicine. In actual fact, it's the Arabic scholars that preserved the medical knowledge which has allowed the West to catch up, if you like. So I studied history before, so I'm a little bit, I can go off on a tangent with history. So therapeutic teas as well, really good, and can be part of your water intake as well. And I go into that a bit more further along. And supplements, of course, I do believe in using supplements. But primarily you can't out supplement a poor diet. So the diet and the lifestyle is the priority. The kind of supplements that I like to use are things like mineral complex, some herbal supplements, because our soil is depleted in minerals. So therefore, all our plants are depleted as well, to a lesser and greater degree. So, you know, the body shows symptoms of what it's deficient in. And some of the main ones are D3, particularly for colorectal cancers and liver metastases. Having a level of D3 between around 150 and 200 is really vital, incredibly important. And the NHS is varied. Some say over 50 is okay, but I think across the board people are starting to realise the importance of vitamin D. The other one is B12, because many of you will have been on proton pump inhibitors, which things like omeprazole or lansoprazole or any of the azoles, and that reduces your stomach acid, which means that you can't absorb B12 through the gastric system, because it basically needs an acidic environment in order to be transported to the receptor and for it to be available. So B12 taken sublingually clears up that problem very quickly. And part of the brain fog that you can feel during your treatment is a lack of B12. It causes fatigue, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, almost like the symptoms of dementia, really. Those sorts of cloudy, foggy, horrible feelings. So there's obviously lots more available. So next slide, please. So yeah, I've kind of covered that. Eating your nutrient-rich foods first, eating real foods that hopefully you or your family or your friends have prepared, and keeping your sugars low. And if you are going to have sugar, have it next to a protein. So things, and have something real. If you're going to use sugar, use unrefined brown sugar, or if you want to make something for the family that everyone will eat, sometimes I would take some dates and soak them in hot water and then blitz them and then use them as a sugary liquid to add to something sweeter. So it's sweet, but it's not full of all the other nasty things that you would get in a supermarket. And if you have sugar with a protein, it prevents a glucose spike, and that prevents you falling way down and then having to climb back up again. And that highs and lows actually make you feel much more fatigued. So trying to adopt a savory attitude where possible is really good. So next slide, please. So organic food, I do believe, I am a great believer in organic food. I've worked in horticulture for nearly 20 years, and I know all the awful things about chemicals. So for me, that's been really helpful to make me prioritize the products that I eat the most to be organic, or meat wise to be grass fed, if not organic, and to buy organic vegetables. So I just listed a couple of halal ones. Saffron Ali and Halal Origins are both organically grown halal meat farmers. And there's Piper's Farm, which is slightly cheaper. It's not halal, it's not organic, but it's grass-fed meat that they've been around for over 20 years, rearing their animals properly and feeding them the kind of diet they are actually meant to eat. And Riverford's is my favourite for vegetables, and Abel and Cole as well. Someone loves Riverford's. I love Riverford's, and you can have a box or you can choose what you like, but we've just gone through the cherry season, which was amazing. So I've been eating lots of cherries, and now I'm really excited about the radishes as well. So And that's something I've done for a long time, and it just pleases me to feed myself as well as I possibly can in this crazy food world where food is often, it might look like food, but it just doesn't taste like food. So, and I think particularly we're seeing a rise in cancers, and for me, it's a rise in the non-food items that are put into our foods and the way they're preserved, packed, and treated. So next slide, please. So I don't know, many people might have heard of this, the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So at the top, the EWG brings out a list. 24 will actually show 23 because obviously the harvest is after. But they produce this list every year. And if we look at this, the Dirty Dozen is, I'm struggling to read it myself now. Put my glasses on, see if that helps. No, it doesn't because they're my far away glasses. Oh, I can just make it bigger. So peaches, 85% of the samples had more than 85% of the samples had multiple pesticide residues on them. So, you know, it's quite shocking. We could say nearly all peaches, nearly all grapes, nearly all strawberries, cherries, spinach are really high. That to me is a very high number of chemicals that aren't meant to be in your body at all. And the apples at 72%, you can get away with peeling them. However, like our own bodies, if we put cream on our skin, we will absorb it. And apples are the same. We're more similar to plants biologically than we like to think. Actually, many of our mitochondria works in the same way in our bodies to provide energy as it does in plants, which I find quite fascinating. So that's that list. Lettuce has improved actually, because lettuce used to be right at the top. So that is actually either lettuce has improved or everything else has got worse. So the next slide, please. So these are the Clean 15. And to me, these are the things that it's not so important. The other thing that I would like to say is I disagree with the mushrooms, actually. I think mushrooms should be organic because the nature of a mushroom is that it will draw toxicity out of the soil. And they have actually been used in Chernobyl to clean soils. So with that knowledge, I would only buy an organic mushroom. But these are the things that you can enjoy. The only difference I would say is that if you've got a low appetite, an organic carrot is going to give you more nutrition for less carrot, if you see my point. So that's another good thing. I will stop going on about organic now. Next slide, please. So this sometimes makes people feel offended when I say it, and it's not meant to. Only 10%, slightly less actually, of cancers are caused by genetic mutation. Most cancers are actually caused by diet and lifestyle factors, and I would include in that environmental factors as well. And to me, this is empowering because it gives us the opportunity to embrace change, and we can change our environment in terms of what we eat, where we go. More difficult where we live, but we can still do things that enhance our environment. So there's a lot of opportunity for change. Next slide, please. So these are the areas that nutritional therapy focuses on. Nutrition, as we've talked about, hydration, hugely important, and there's another slide further on. Gut health, which we've touched upon, blood sugar balance, we've touched upon. Inflammation, obviously, you know, coming out of cancer, you're in a very inflamed, very vulnerable state, and that state can take quite a while to recover from. And I think many of us rush back to our lives and then crumple into a heap because we've tried to get back to normal really quickly. So it's really important to slow down. I've got a few pointers at the end about that. Obviously, effective detoxification, reducing toxins, and to me, reducing the amount of toxins that you take in from other areas, whether it's, you know, cleaning products in the kitchen, your shower gel, the shampoo that you use, choosing a different route to walk outside rather than walking in heavy traffic. There's lots of ways to reduce your toxicity. Energy, I think, is huge in during your treatment and after your treatment, because you're in deficit. You're like a car that hasn't been serviced for a long time. So that can play a massive part on your mental health. If you can't play with your children, if you go to the shops and feel like you have to lie down straight away, you know, these sorts of things can be improved over time. And stress and well-being. Stress is absolutely massive driver of cancer. I would almost say reduce your stress before you buy your organic veg, because stress drives cortisol and cortisol drives disease. And it's a mechanism that is supposed to make us run away from danger or swerve our car out of an oncoming vehicle. It's not meant to be something that is prolonged or in our everyday lives. And I think particularly many women, I certainly was, I lived on stress. I juggled everything. I thought I was amazing. I could do 6 things at the same time. And actually, I was really not helping myself. So sleep is a massive one. Often it eludes us during our treatment, and you can end up with insomnia. So there are certain supplements that medicines permitting can help to induce sleep. Sometimes something as simple as having some magnesium before bed, but also having really good sleep hygiene, turning the lights down low, not having a stressful conversation or a phone call after 8 o'clock at night, not watching the news before bed, just really entering a state of calm. And ideally, in the ideal world, we would all sleep between about 10 and 6. And actually, even if you are really tired, 8 hours is that's your optimal sweet point. Staying in bed longer has a negative effect. So even when you don't want to get up, you need to get up after your 8 hours and, you know, rest during the day, but don't spend so long in bed because you're immobile for more than 8 hours, and it means your lymphatic system becomes stagnant and you become quite toxic. Next slide, please. So I'm going to rush a bit because I'm aware that there's quite a lot of slides and I want to leave time for questions. So as we said, hydration keeps your stool soft and moving, helps get the toxins out. It's absolutely crucial to support your kidney health. On the next slide, thank you. This is my nausea slide. So these are umeboshi Japanese plums, and they're about £8 for this little jar. But you can chop them up and have them on a teaspoon, and they are quite good at reducing nausea and harming the digestive tract. Clear Spring also do a umesu vinegar, which is like a salty plum vinegar, which is quite nice in a stir fry. So you can get an electrode stimulator relief band, and this can be quite good where you're really weak and really struggling. So you just wear it like a Fitbit on your wrist, and it stimulates a acupuncture point, which helps relieve the nausea. So they are expensive. You can get them for around £70 on Amazon, and they go up. But worth thinking about in extreme cases of nausea. Distraction therapy. Lots of people like knitting to take their mind away from it. Housework, cleaning out a cupboard, reading, whatever you can do to distract yourself from the focus on nausea can be helpful. And also with pain as well, just trying to distract your mind. Ginger tea is well known, very good. And cumins and fennel seed water, which I'm sure some people may know about. So you can either soak the seeds overnight in water, or I tend to get a dessert spoon of seeds, bring them to the boil in a pan of water, simmer them for 5 minutes, and then strain it off. And I might have a glass while it's hot, but I'll just make a litre or so, and I will just sip it. The fennel seed is really velvety and really pleasantly harming to the guts. The cumin is really good if you're more suffering trapped wind, bloating, and obviously reducing. The more toxins you can get out of your system and not put in your system, the less likely you will be extremely nauseated. And obviously sometimes you just have to go through it. So the next slide, please. So I think we've covered that one. Yeah, so on to the next one. This is just to show you the organs of detoxification. I think a lot of us think definitely liver and intestines, but these are all organs of detoxification. So I think this is particularly, to me, it's helpful that if you have a metastases to the liver, you've still got all these other ways of getting toxins out of your system. So they're like a team, they work together. But if your liver is having lots of chemotoxicity, trying to make sure that your other capacities, you know, you're drinking water for your kidneys, you're having some bitter leaves to bring about your digestive enzymes before eating. You're breathing well, you're breathing in nice spaces, like ideally in a lovely woodland or at least your local park. Your skin, looking after that, not putting loads of chemicals on it. And the next slide, please. So movement is hugely important, and I think even hospitals are starting to realize this. So it used to be, I used to get into trouble for trying to get out of bed, and they just wanted me to stay in bed and be a good patient. But actually, studies have shown that any kind of movement is really, really important, and actually can reduce the symptoms of chemotherapy. And even if you can't get up, you can still move your arms around, do a little dance in the kitchen. Anything that you can do that is moving is getting your lymph flowing around the body and not stagnating. And actually it produces endorphins that make you feel happier. So, you know, people that are very well who manage to do a gym session before their chemo, obviously not a massive workout, just something gentle, or people that go for a cycle or just a good brisk walk, actually tend to have less side effects with their chemo in many cases. It also increases your oxygen intake, and the more oxygen we can bathe ourselves in, the better. It can improve your quality of sleep and also reduce stress. Next slide, please. So sleep, I think I've covered that pretty much. And nutrition, yeah, I think I've covered that. So if I go on to the last slide, second last slide. So these are my stress and well-being points that I really believe strongly in. Letting go of negative chatter. So talking really kindly to yourself and building some barriers for the people that you might love them dearly, but they just bring you down and make you feel depressed. Just build a little wall for them and only let them in when you feel you can. Living in the moment, really difficult to do, but my favorite is washing up. When I'm washing up, I really focus on my washing up, and I look at the plates, I feel the suds. I just really enjoy it, and I feel really calm afterwards. And I've also ended up having a clean kitchen, which is really nice, rather than meditating and having nothing extra. So letting go of your worries, if you can, writing them down, or I find physically I wave them out of the way when I'm focusing on something else, and I bring them out when I have to. Putting out loving and kind thoughts, it sounds a bit woo, but actually I think it's, if you can build a love for the world and the people in it, it reduces your stress, and it's just a very healthy thing to work towards. And and embracing patients. I think this is really, really important, especially when you go through anxiety, where you've got a 3-monthly scan, then 6-monthly, and then 12-monthly. It's a really difficult time to go through, and I'm sure most people that have been through cancer have embraced and had to embrace some patients. And appreciating the little things in life is helpful. And laughter, I prescribe laughter to my cancer people, whether it's with friends that make you laugh or watching a comedy, whatever it is. Laughter tones your vagus nerve, makes you feel better and reduces your stress. And maintaining your happy place, making decisions about your life that are right for you, so that you can move on and become a healthier, happier person. And I think that's all of them. Yes. Phew. Sorry, it went a bit fast in the end.
Not at all. That was fantastic. Chrissy, it was all going really, really well until you mentioned that you enjoyed washing dishes, and it ended it for me there, unfortunately. Thank you so much. I honestly, I'm sitting here and I'm making copious notes. And I was wishing that I had met you 12 years ago, because you have simplified a very, very complicated area in such easy layman terms. And I've personally been on these events quite a lot, and even then I'd never heard of the Dirty Dozen and the other one that you mentioned, and that's certainly something that I'm going to be looking into. I am conscious of the time, and I am going to open up for Q&A, but just wanted to ask you one thing. Do you think we are nearer or getting nearer to a time when the cancer will be treated by consultants, by oncologists, in a holistic way, where they take into account all of this whilst treating the patient, as opposed to them having to go away and finding out all this information themselves? Do you think we're getting closer to that?
I would like to think so, but I just went to the Oncology UK conference, which is an NHS conference, and I felt quite depressed afterwards. I think there are pockets of hopefulness, and certainly in Europe we are way behind other countries. So I'm really hopeful. It's about education and knowledge, and I always get my people to tell their consultant, if they're confident, what they're doing, and the consultant usually says, oh well, it's nothing to do with that, it's all to do with the drugs. But it will be filtering in somehow, so fingers crossed, inshallah.
Inshallah. I'm going to open up to questions. If anyone has a question, please feel free. There's a question that's come up saying, what are your thoughts about getting into a ketogenic state? Does that work?
Yeah, I have tried ketogenic diets, and I have read a lot about them, and I'm familiar with Nature Winters and have heard her talk quite often, and she is a real proponent of it, and I do think there's value in it. I think it's extreme. I recommend it where people are being told there is no options. I think it's good. I think you need to do it with somebody who is a knowledgeable practitioner, because you need to test as you go along. but nature herself has been alive. She was diagnosed with a terminal cancer in her teens and given a couple of years, basically, and she's now in her, I think she's in her 50s now. So yeah, I think it's an option, and certainly low carb is definitely positive.
Thank you so much for that, Chrissy. There's another question, which is, what can help with acidity, please, which can sometimes be a symptom of the treatment?
Is that acidity as in reflux, or the thing about body acidity?
I think it's in relation to the reflux.
Okay, so there's something that I use a lot, which is very gentle. It's called Slippery Elm, and I call it Slippy. I love it. You can get it from BioCare in a capsule or a powder form with some other herbs that are calming, and that can be really, really helpful. There are the mechanical things as well, like sitting at a table, not suddenly lying down after food, because your stomach is moving like a washing machine. It's a very violent mechanism, and if you're eating on a sofa, naturally your angle is scrunching you up. So trying to sit in an open position and eating, staying quite upright is quite helpful, as well as sometimes just using some over-the-counter Gaviscon. The important thing is that you're protecting your esophagus. It's very, very important. And sometimes it will be the meds, but sometimes it's mechanical. Not fantastic answer, but
yeah, and I think sometimes just maintaining a diary of what you've eaten to see if there are any triggers as well. You'd be quite surprised what you can pick up. Chrissy, if you could put in the chat the name of the product that you mentioned.
Yeah. Where's the, oh, and also, you could ring up the company and they would talk you through how to use it.
And Chrissy, there's a question that says, I got a bit confused with the part about strawberries and blueberries, etc. I read they were very good to their very good due to their antioxidant values.
They are, if they're not toxic in themselves. So strawberries, even organically, I would avoid as a cancer patient going through treatment, simply because an allowable pesticide an allowable product for use in organic farming is copper-based spray, and it's really important that your copper levels aren't elevated during cancer treatment.
Thank you, Chrissy. The next couple of questions, I have to say, when you were talking about it, I did think about, what can we do to remove the pesticides? And somebody's mentioned washing fruit and veg with bicarbonate soda. Does that help? And if not, is there anything else?
It has been proven to be effective. I prefer to use vinegar veggie wash. So I put if it's a sort of average bowl, I put a dessert spoon of any kind of vinegar I have into the water, and I wash anything that is not going to be cooked, particularly salad items, because if you're on a proton pump inhibitor like omeprazole, and you've got low stomach acid, your first line of defense is missing. So normally any foodborne microbes that are on uncooked foods would be killed partially by your digestive enzymes, and then finished off in your stomach, basically. So when you think that your white blood count could be low, your immune system's low, you really want to avoid upsetting your stomach by having microbes. So I find the vinegar wash just, and you can't really taste it on anything. I just find it quite a nice, simple way of doing it.
Thank you. And there's a question about the levels of vitamin D3 that you should be taking. Is there a recommended, or is it dependent on individuals?
I can't think of an individual where I would not recommend a decent dose. So I would want everyone really to be around 150. The NHS themselves vary between, some authorities say between 50 and 75. There have been the odd ones that have said 125. But using a sublingual vitamin D is always better. The tissue is soft, it's easy to absorb. And just using, I sound like an advert for BioCare, but they just produce your basic stuff. So they do liquid drops. And again, you can ring them, they will talk you through. Or better use spray is sufficient. That's available in supermarkets even. And you just spray it to either side of your cheek. And then the NHS have not really testing for vitamin D. Occasionally you get lucky, but it's because a doctor told me we will be bankrupt if we do that. But you can actually get tests online. If you Google, you can get a test with a value for about 30 quid, and then do 3 months of supplementation and retest. And just make sure you get a test that gives you a score, not one that gives you a scale. So it will just say you're within the limits. You want something that tells you a score.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to take one last question, which is around avoiding dairy products and using oat or almond milk as alternatives.
I think they're useful in that it's a replacement. That's about as far as it goes, really. It's not really comparative nutrition wise. I would say you're still going to get your calcium from your dark leafy green vegetables, for instance, and also just making sure you get your healthy fats. So olive oil is a great way of getting some healthy fats into your system. And if you haven't got a hormone-driven cancer, maybe just trying to switch to goat's milk can be a little better.
And thank you so much. I'm going to ask one final question that Khadija asked, which is, what brand of washing up liquid do you use? We're all sat here wondering if we're going wrong.
At the moment, I'm using Method coconut shampoo.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, washing up liquid. But I'm constantly searching for a better option, but I always use one that is less toxic if I can find it, because I want to eat my food off something that isn't too toxic, and also I'm absorbing it through my skin. So
absolutely. Honestly, Christy, that has been immensely valuable. I have made, like I said to you earlier, I've made copious notes of things that I'm going to look into personally. And some of the things that you have said, it doesn't require anything drastic. It's actually quite small changes that you can make. And And the one thing I do want to mention is that the last slide that you mentioned, I do think everybody should have that on their fridge or on their table, on their desks, and live their life by those, you know, pointers that you've mentioned, because I think they're really, really good. So thank you so much. There's some lovely messages from people in the chat. Extremely grateful for you, particularly stepping in at such late in the day. But it's been extremely beneficial to us, and like you can tell from the comments as well that people have also found it really, really beneficial. So thank you once again.
Brilliant.
And thank you to everyone who attended, and as always, thank you so much to Sister Nadia, who does a lot of the behind the scenes work to make these events happen. So thank you once again, and thank you, Chris.
And thank
Chrissy,
you for
as well.
inviting me.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you, Assalamualaikum.
Welcome. Somebody wants to join now. Nadia, if you want to start recording.
I'm just trying to work out how I leave. I'm not used